Question 5 says the function of f is defined by, and there's f of x. It says it's a one-to-one function. It wants me to determine the inverse of f, and then use interval notation or at the domain of the inverse and the range of the inverse. So let's go ahead and see if we can come up with this. So let's start by finding the inverse first. So remember, to find the inverse, we replace the f of x with a y. So y is equal to 3 square root of 5x plus 1. And then I switch the x and the y. So x is equal to 3 square root of 5y plus 1. Okay, now we're going to solve for y. So I'm going to divide by 3. So I got x over 3 equals the square root of 5y plus 1. I'm just trying to get y by itself. I'm going to square both sides. So that would be x squared over 9 equals 5y plus 1. I'm going to minus the 1 over. And divide by 5. Now when you divide by 5, this is a little bit tricky. You could divide the whole thing by 5, or I could times by a fifth by both of them. That may be the easier way to think about this one. So you end up with the inverse of y up here, inverse of f, sorry, is equal to, when I times that 1/5 through, I'm going to get x squared over 45 minus, times that 1/5 through. Okay. That is the inverse of f of x. Now it wants me to find the domain and range. So that's a little tough on here because if you look at the original function, there are some restrictions on the domain, right? It's a square root, so I can't have negatives inside of there. So there are going to be restrictions on the domain, which means there are probably going to be some restrictions on the range. Now, the issue with my answer down here is I can't see those because some of those restrictions are gone now. So I need to start with this function and find the domain and range of that. Let's see if we can do that. And then if I just switch those two, I'll have the domain and range of its inverse. So I'm going to take the domain, I've got a square root. The inside of the square root has to be greater than or equal to 0. So I'm going to take the 5x plus 1. We talked about this through, on these previous few questions. I'm going to minus the 1 over. 5x has to be greater than or equal to -1 and divide by 5. So my domain is x has to be greater than or equal to -1/5. Or in other words, from -1/5 to infinity. Now, think about what a square root function looks like. This has a +3. So I don't know exactly. There's been some shifting, but I know it's going up like this. Well, if my first x value is a -1/5, what I can do is plug a -1/5 in there, and I can see where my y value starts. So if I plug in a -1/5, 5 times the -1/5 is -1, and -1 plus 1 is 0. So that's the square root of 0. 0 times 3 is 0. So even though there's been a horizontal shift, it's probably a little over this way, there has not been a vertical shift, right? There's no plus or minus on the outside. So that means my y values start at 0 and go to infinity. So that's a domain and range of this original function f of x. Well, to find the domain and range of my inverse function, I just switch those two. So the range up here, the 0 to infinity, becomes the domain of my inverse function. And the range is the domain of that original function. So just switch those two, -1/5 to infinity. Okay, so that should be my domain and range. So you got to look at the domain and range of the original, and once you have that, you can work backwards to find the domain and range of the new function. Let's put those two in there. Just check our answer. So the inverse of f of x was x squared over 45. It's being kind of silly here. Let me put this domain in. Let's put the domain and range in first. Then I'll go back. So the domain is 0 to infinity, and the range is -1/5 to infinity. So it is 0 to infinity. Okay, and then the range, because we switched it, was -1/5. Doesn't want to give me that fraction bar, we get it there. Negative 1/5. Whoops, not 2. Did 2 again. Hold on. There we go. To infinity. Okay. So we got the domain and range, 0 to infinity, negative 1/5 to infinity. And then this is my inverse function, x squared over 45 minus a fifth. So let's go back and put that in there. So x squared over 45 minus, and it was 1/5. Just double check it one more time, make sure I put it all in there right. That looks good. Let's check our answer. And we got it partially correct. He didn't like something we did. Let's double check that. If you see what happened, I believe the problem is I had those parentheses inside of there. I didn't mean to do that. That was supposed to be a bracket on the left side and a parenthesis on the right side. Let me see if I can fix that easily here. I'm just going to delete the whole thing there. Oh, there we go. So let's go. We want a bracket on the left side and a parenthesis and we need to go back to our. Just be careful. Don't get sloppy like I did there when you enter in your. Ooh, it wants to do that again for some reason. There we go. Must have hit it twice or something. All right, let's check it now. All right, now it looks good. All right, there you go. There is question number 5.